In this edition of Southern Newsweek, a man who's previously fled a war-torn area urges the government to allow even more refugees into the country. As a solution to obesity right here in Dunedin, local ideas are on the table as part of an annual conference. And the misfortune of a rare porpoise provides a unique opportunity for Otago Museum staff. Kia ora, I'm Holly Buchanan. As civil war tears Syria apart, locals are calling for New Zealand's refugee quota to be permanently doubled. Immigration Minister and Dunedin MP Michael Woodhouse has announced a special emergency intake of Syrian refugees. But one resident wants to see the government go further, having escaped a war zone for the city.
They're a common sight around the globe. Refugees seeking asylum as civil war forces them to flee their homes. The major humanitarian crisis has Dunedin residents joining international calls for more action. This panel's been put together by the local student group for Amnesty International, involving a former refugee who entered the country after escaping a war zone.
It was absolute chaos, and tanks rolled up into the cities and absolutely annihilated everything with no regard for human life. People that would try to flee would be killed.
This panel's the first part of a push by university students to lobby the government to double its refugee quota. International Relations Professor Robert Patman says it could be a smart move, as the quota's not changed in decades, especially as condemnation of the government's reluctance to take more refugees gains traction.
And I think people have been deeply moved by the appalling images that we've all seen on our TV screens of refugees who've left desperate circumstances and in some cases found themselves behind barbed wire in the countries they'd hoped to find a new home in.
While Dunedin's already got a small refugee population, Allwash wants to see it increase. And he says residents can aid refugees by offering them places to stay.
I think if you can be able to provide your home even for a day or until somebody can get back on their feet, then you make they owe you their lives.
Local students involved with Amnesty International say the refugee crisis is becoming more humanised. They'd like to see a refugee resettlement program developed in Dunedin. But first, their focus is on helping to open New Zealand's borders. David DeLorean, 39, Dunedin News.
Design is being phased out at the University of Otago, with staff confirming the department's closure. That's despite student protests to save the design school. Existing design majors will be replaced by qualifications with wider scope, and students aren't happy about it.
Zach Newton came to Dunedin for the unique design education only offered in the city. But the university's Department of Applied Sciences is being disestablished, and that means the design school's doors are going to shut permanently.
We're a bit gutted, to be honest. We kind of feel like the decision was made prior to even being consulted with us. That's our feeling.
Newton says the design school is filled with passionate people, some of whom protested against its proposed closure. Now, the 36 design students are being left out in the cold, uncertain about the future of their studies.
We don't know what's going to happen. They said that they want to make this a quick process from the outset, but it's been nearly 3 months and we still don't know what's going to be happening. Apart from that, at the end of 2 years, there isn't going to be anything.
No one from the university was available for an interview, but they've released documents about their decision, citing low student numbers and increasing costs, as well as plans to create a new centre with new, all-inclusive majors. Uni staff also plan to help existing design students finish their degrees, but Newton doubts they'll be able to match the current programs, and students might walk.
I don't think there is any other option for us, unfortunately. That was one of our key points, there isn't anything like this anywhere else in the country. We are a pretty unique course. There aren't many places around the world that offer this sort of course either.
The design school's closure also means about 8 staff are losing their jobs, although new roles will be created. And those details should be firmed up by the end of the year. David DeLorean, 39, Dunedin News.
Obesity is set to become New Zealand's largest health problem and is already a major priority for medical workers. It's one of many issues being discussed at the Public Health Association's annual conference taking place in Dunedin, and the event's putting local solutions under the spotlight.
Almost 300 health experts from New Zealand and Australia gather in Dunedin for a 3-day conference exploring the theme that public health is everybody's business. And it's not just medical staff involved. Delegates also represent local government as well as the commercial sector.
If we want to improve the health of all New Zealanders, we can't just rely on the health service or the health sector to do that. We've got to get the whole of the nation involved.
They're pondering the big issues, what the country's public health sector will need to address in coming years, and how to do that with all parties working towards a common goal.
And obesity is going to become the biggest public health problem in New Zealand. It's going to have a bigger impact than smoking very shortly. So we need to be thinking about how can we, as New Zealand, Aotearoa, how can we respond to the challenge of obesity in our population.
With the conference held in Dunedin, local initiatives are at the forefront of discussion, including research from the university's Preventive and Social Medicine Department and city-wide efforts to promote activity, ideas to inspire delegates and to be replicated elsewhere.
So there's about starting up, sharing good ideas and seeing those start up in many places across the country, the idea of a small seed growing and taking root across the whole of New Zealand. So that's one aspect.
The City Council's social wellbeing strategy is also being highlighted through the conference, a healthy way forward for the city and potentially the rest of New Zealand. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
Contractors are removing errors in the bungled South Dunedin cycle network on behalf of the City Council. Some traffic islands are being removed after complaints from residents and authorities. Many motorists have been driving over top of the traffic islands instead of manoeuvring around them. In some areas, the new road layout is too narrow for fire engines and other large vehicles. Contractors are reinstating two-way traffic in some streets and installing new signage. Council staff have admitted blunders in the network, which has cost about $4 million to date. The fixing of problems is expected to cost a few $100,000, leaving less in the budget for additional work. The discovery of a porpoise washed up on a beach is giving local researchers a new insight into the rare species. The young female has been dissected at Otago Museum, and that's led to some interesting discoveries.
A new perspective on the spectacled porpoise. Researchers at Otago Museum examine the rare creature's dorsal fin. It's been dissected and the body frozen, having washed up on a Canterbury beach earlier in the year. And the work's already teaching museum staff more about the mysterious sea creature.
The interesting thing is that there are some tubercles around the edge of it, so just on the leading edge there. And this hasn't been seen in any specimens that have been found in South America, but it is found in ones in the Pacific.
The porpoise is actually the third dissected at the museum in the past year, but it's the first female specimen locals have gotten their hands on. Webster says porpoise are incredibly rare finds, with only 7 discovered washed up around the country. And dissection's been invaluable for learning how the mammals move, as well as what they eat.
The stomach itself was really distended, all 3 parts of it, and it was full of parasites. We actually took out about 1 kilo of parasites from the stomach, which is pretty amazing for a small creature.
It's not known if porpoise usually eat those parasites, but it's possible a small sea tulip lodged in the stomach trapped them in there. And as the examination of the creature continues, it's hoped more information about those discoveries will come to light.
The ultimate goal was to be able to compare New Zealand's these spectacled porpoises that are turning up in New Zealand to some of the ones that have turned up in Tierra del Fuego in South America, and see if this is a different population to those.
Burns hopes to vastly expand local knowledge of the marine mammal, and researchers at Otago University will help with that when they examine the remains later this year. David DeLorean, 39, Dunedin News.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek. 2 environmental groups joined forces to address a perplexing conservation issue, and a local educational institution achieves fair trade status, the first of its kind. Welcome back. A lack of public appreciation for local conservation efforts is being addressed through a new partnership. The Department of Conservation is working with Orokonui Eco Sanctuary for a new public awareness campaign, and more environmental groups are set to benefit.
discussing ways to engage the public with nature. Department of Conservation staff are working with those at Orokonui Eco Sanctuary to grow their profile locally. It's part of a new DOC campaign aimed at supporting and amplifying the work of conservation groups citywide.
Ka mihi raupu tiaki, or Spotlight on Conservation, is all about featuring groups that work for conservation and really highlighting the awesome work that they do and why they do it and why it's important. And the main objective really is to get people thinking about how they can be involved in helping these organisations achieve their goals.
Dench is coordinating the campaign in an effort to get various conservation groups and their work recognised by the general public, particularly residents of the inner city.
Obviously lots of people live in our urban centre Dunedin, and so getting them more connected with what's going on in the community around conservation is really important to us.
The Eco Sanctuaries on DOC land. General Manager Chris Bailey says the organisations have enjoyed a positive working relationship for several years, and she hopes this latest campaign builds on that to grow conservation efforts.
We want to extend the knowledge about Orokonui and what we're doing to both of those groups, locals and other New Zealanders and overseas, and also perhaps attract new volunteers, new sponsors, new supporters, all those sorts of things that help support the biodiversity conservation work that we do here.
While the campaign's starting with Orokonui, Dench says the focus will shift to showcasing the work of smaller community-based groups, giving the wider Dunedin population as much insight as possible into the retention of the city's natural environment. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
The rise of number plate thefts in the city is being combated by community patrol staff. They're helping motorists to secure registration plates with special screws, and they hope it leads to a reduction in crime.
Preventing theft by attaching number plates to vehicles with special screws. Community patrol staff help car owners for a small fee in a first-of-its-kind initiative held in a supermarket car park next to the Central Police Station. The screws can only be removed by a special tool, and the logic behind their use is simple.
The story is that if people come to a car which has got those screws on, they'll go to another car which is easier to steal the plates on.
He says the theft of licence plates from local vehicles is a growing issue and one that residents as well as police are keen to curb.
A major problem in North Island, but it's working its way down here. There's been incidents of just in recent times, 1 week there was 8 cars had plates stolen.
Some plates are even being stolen from the vehicles parked in commercial car yards, predominantly as a precursor to other crime.
Main reason would be that they're going to commit a crime with it. And we're talking about crimes, drive-offs and that sort of thing, going for petrol.
He says thieves see stealing plates as easy and effective.
If they've got the wrong plates, it's as good as having a stolen car. Stolen plates, they can, same thing.
He's overwhelmed with the response from locals who have been lining up to have plates fixed. But he warns residents not to become complacent.
People need to secure their cars. Make sure they're locked, no keys in it and the valuables are gone. And in saying that, it's my personal opinion, they should be locked even in the garage.
The initiative helps to fund local community patrols, which are supported by the City Council. Rosie Mannins, 39, Dunedin News.
Dunedin's Oriental ties were recently celebrated as part of Chinese Language Week. The local range of associated events included a program of activities at the Dunedin Chinese Garden, and staff were excited about sharing their knowledge of Chinese culture and language with the public.
Making slow, deliberate strokes. Dunedin Chinese Garden staff practice calligraphy as part of their annual Chinese Language Week program. And Visitor Services Officer Li Wang says there's growing interest in the varied Chinese language.
Chinese language and culture has become increasingly more interesting to the public, and lots of people have indicated their interest of learning it, and I think this is a really good chance for the people to come and celebrate it while at the same time know more about the culture and also learn a few very useful, interesting Chinese phrases.
Wang says Kiwis are often put off from learning Asian languages because of the written characters. But she says in comparison to some Western languages, Chinese dialects such as Mandarin are relatively easy.
I think lots of people are put off by the writing because the characters are really hard to learn and to master. But the grammar is really easy. Yeah, it's not like we don't have verb conjugation rules like that. We don't have tenses, so it's not as hard as most people think.
The Garden's week-long program also includes daily movie screenings, selected to highlight different aspects of Chinese culture, building on what residents already know from the city's long history with the Chinese.
Dunedin is a special place, especially for the Chinese community. Going back to the gold mining period, lots of Chinese people had contributed a lot to this region.
The city's close ties to China are constantly being strengthened predominantly through its sister city relationship with Shanghai. Mayor Dave Cull is in China at present, leading a local delegation to explore collaborations in business and education. And Wang says the international bond is one of many reasons for locals to broaden their knowledge, not only during this week but throughout the year. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
Otago Polytechnic is the first institution of its kind in New Zealand to be certified as fair trade. It's the result of a push by the sustainability group on campus to buy and sell fair trade products. And after working on the initiative for more than 2 years, members hope to inspire others.
A tea break with a conscience. Otago Polytechnic's strategy to make Dunedin a fair trade city is well on its way, with staff celebrating the institution's unique fair trade status by enjoying some sustainable products.
The Polytechnic is highly committed to sustainability, so we believed it was the right thing to do anyway, but we're really pleased to do it as part of a citywide initiative that we should, everybody in the city should embrace fair trade.
It hasn't all been smooth sailing, as fair trade status requires the entire organisation's involvement. At least half of the tea and coffee on campus must be fair trade, and active promotion of the cause is mandatory.
So there's a group of passionate staff who roll with getting things happening, and we needed to go around and talk to all the administration staff from all the different schools and departments in the Polytech and talk to them about the benefits of fair trade.
The status comes at a price, with fair trade products more expensive than common alternatives, and a $900 annual certification fee is included in the additional expense. But staff say the small budget increase is no barrier.
In some cases it's actually been cheaper, to buy the fair trade. So it sort of depends on what the departments we're buying first, but it's actually quite comparable, the costs. There is obviously a cost of being accredited, and that's a yearly cost.
Members of the Polytechnic's Fair Trade Group hope their initiative inspires other local organisations and residents to follow suit. And in the meantime, they're happy to contribute to a good cause. Annabelle Dick, 39 Dunedin News.
And just ahead on Southern Newsweek, we'll find out why a teenage music festival is going back to the future, and we discover how a stress-reducing initiative is benefiting animal welfare agencies. Welcome back. Teenage musicians from around the lower South Island recently took over the Dunedin Town Hall. Hundreds performed for this year's Otago Secondary School's Music Festival, and the historic show was given a futuristic twist.
The culmination of a month's practice. Hundreds of high school pupils perform in the town hall for the 46th annual Secondary Schools Music Festival, with this year's show celebrating a popular time-travelling film trilogy.
The title of the concert is actually Back to the Future, so we've got some Back in there as well as a lot of Back to the Future numbers.
Grant says performing in the town hall's a treat for pupils, as the venue's acoustics are top-notch. Students from each of the city's secondary schools are involved, as well as some from Central Otago and Southland. And as some schools don't have orchestras or even choirs, the chance for pupils to play with such a big group is proving too good to pass up.
It's a really good opportunity to make music with lots of different people of varying abilities and backgrounds, which is a really useful experience as a musician.
Our school orchestra is tiny, so it's quite exciting to play with lots of other musicians and sing in the mass choir as well.
The 700-strong groups spent the day rehearsing one last time, having spent the past few weeks learning the music and practising at a local high school. And a grant from the City Council means the event's free for the first time.
It just takes the pressure off the organising committee who try and raise the funds through other grants and other places. Which is always a worry, wondering whether we've actually got the money to actually continue it on for the next year.
The festival's one night only, and all on stage expect to give the public an impressive show, cranking the sound up to 1.21 gigawatts. David DeLorean, 39 Dunedin News.
Elderly citizens have been paid a visit from the Men in Black thanks to their way with words. Radius Fulton Rest Home residents have just hosted several All Blacks as winners in a national competition, and they took the opportunity to wish the players luck for the fast approaching Rugby World Cup.
Taking time out from training to enjoy poetry. All Blacks Ben Smith, Ben Franks and Kieran Reid are treated to the lyrical styling of residents at the Radius Fulton Rest Home. A poem celebrating the team's history won residents a chance to host the trio. And Frank says it's nice to put smiles on the faces of some of the team's oldest fans.
It's a bit of a novelty for them to have they had a children's group in earlier on and us coming through, so yeah, it's just a little thing but it sort of made their day, so yeah, it's good fun.
Almost 200 entries were received to host the All Blacks ahead of the Rugby World Cup. The 31 players have been divided between 10 winning groups from as far north as Auckland to Mataura in the deep south. And Radius Fulton Activities Coordinator Beth Sizemore is happy to see the home's rugby-mad residents enjoying their win.
The residents are up, they watch all the games. Yeah, they have a wee party central here. So, I mean, they're amazingly clever about all the technical aspects of the games. I won't tell you what they say about certain referees.
This is the fourth All Blacks to the Nation tour, and Frank says it's a highlight on the team's calendar, giving players a break from training to experience community support firsthand.
It breaks it up, well, it's nice to get out amongst the public, the fans, the people who make it possible for us to, sort of live our dreams.
The team departs for England in a few days, shortly after which these rugby fans will be tuned into the first game against Argentina. Ruby McAndrew, 39 Dunedin News.
The country's fastest ice skaters put their training to the test. Almost 100 competitors flocked to Dunedin for the National Speed Skating Championships, and some of the city's young skaters also got in on the action.
And they're off. The country's top speed skaters race each other and the clock for New Zealand's annual Ice Speed Skating Championships. Competitors from Auckland and Christchurch make up the majority of entries. But Dunedin Ice Skating Club representative Glenys Mitchell says the local contingent is also making its mark.
There's not as big a scene as what we would like. We would like it to be bigger. It is growing and we've got a fantastic bunch of littlies coming through, which we're very, very proud of.
For the first time in 5 years, Dunedin has a junior relay team entered, which Mitchell says is good news for the future of the sport. And competitor Lily Taitimu says the currently small speed skating scene isn't necessarily a bad thing.
There's not a lot of people involved in the sport, but usually if you start the sport and you do it for a couple of years, you usually know everybody in the sport, which is kind of good because then there's no strangers in that.
Taitimu has been speed skating for over a decade and has big goals for this competition.
I hope to tomorrow I need to get my 1500 metre time, so I go to Junior Worlds, so hopefully that will happen.
The Junior World competition is in Bulgaria early next year, and Mitchell says that's just one of the pathways for these athletes, with the potential to progress to Olympic level. But she says with a lot of different sports competing for time on the ice, getting enough practice in is difficult.
We don't have the option of having enough ice time for them to be able to develop what they can here in New Zealand. A, because there's not the funding available to support getting to where the best ice is, and also getting availability of ice is very, very difficult.
She says that's prompted several top skaters to travel to Korea to get more ice time, showing their dedication in the pursuit of speed. Ruby McAndrew, 39 Dunedin News.
And finally, the city's animal welfare agencies are benefiting from an increase in awareness among local tertiary students. University of Otago students are spending time and money to play with cuddly canines as part of an initiative to reduce stress. And organisers say it's a win-win for all.
Taking time out for a bit of a cuddle. To help combat student stress, the Otago University Students Association is providing some furry study buddies. The Cuddle Fox initiative is led by Welfare Officer Payal Ramritu in conjunction with local animal welfare agencies. And she says while it's designed to be a stress reliever for students, it's also a lucrative fundraiser.
We've definitely raised well over $1,000 for the Animal Rescue Network. It's a donation, so I usually say a gold coin donation, and depending on how many kittens come or puppies come is how many people can book a slot. And so the money varies, but it's anywhere from like $100 to $300 each time we run it, and all of that money goes to the organisations.
While these guys are enjoying the company of Dog Rescue Dunedin's puppies, Ramritu is also expanding the initiative to include cuddle sessions with kittens. And she says it's helping discourage students from getting animals of their own.
I really didn't want people getting a kitten, having their flat cat, and then at the end of the year ditching it. I think a lot of people who move down to Dunedin really miss their family pets and things like that. So this is a cool way for people to play with some animals and hopefully not feel so much like they're missing out, and hopefully not get one for their flat.
In previous years, the puppy room was only run biannually just before exams. But with plenty of time slots being booked out within 5 minutes, Ramritu is increasing the frequency of sessions throughout the study year.
So we'll have Dog Rescue Dunedin back next week with their puppies, and then within a few weeks, and then maybe one more week because they missed out last week. And in October we'll have kittens back and SPCA with their puppies too.
The 8-minute time slot isn't enough for some students, with many vowing to come back again as soon as possible, keeping stress levels low and donations high. Ruby McAndrew, 39, Dunedin News.
And that's all for this edition of Southern Newsweek. Please do visit our website, dunedintv.co.nz, where you can download Southern Newsweek and watch individual clips of 39 Dunedin News or webcast the show. I'm Holly Buchanan. Thanks for watching.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.